Hey, Alan, welcome.
Hey, how are you, Steve? Thanks.
I'm good.
Good.
Hey, Mark, welcome.
Steve, how are you?
I'm good.
Hey, Steve, I just looked. I have 5,199 emails on our website.
Whoa.
Just in case,
Whoa.
just wanted to share. It wasn't 4,000, it's 5,200.
I guess. Okay. Hey, Martha.
I
Hi
like your
there.
background. All right.
Hey, Steve, welcome. Christina, if you can help me pay attention to when we have everybody on. I'm as bad as Jake when it comes to planning ahead on that account. I should have my little checklist, but I think of it about 1 minute after it's time to start the meeting.
I think we're good. We've got a mix of everybody, so we can get started. We might have a couple that join after the fact.
And I'll keep an eye on it right now too. So
Okay, I think we have one more, don't we?
I don't see Paul on here. I don't know if he's planning
Yeah.
on coming.
It's not 5:30 yet, so let's give it a couple of minutes. I'll wait until about 2 minutes after, and then we'll get. There's Paul.
Uh-oh. Oh, that was Debbie. Mhm.
Does that give us everybody, Christina?
Looks like it.
Okay. If you guys are able to turn on your cameras, that's a good thing. I just always like seeing everybody. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, I apologize for missing a couple of meetings, guys. I'm going to have to stay off video for now. I have a 6-week-old new boy who has been not allowing me or my wife to sleep, so I'll be running around trying to comfort him.
congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
For sure. Congratulations, but I'm glad it's you and not me. I did my turn at that. So
That's what everybody says, including the grandparents. They love seeing a child and they love handing him off.
Yep. You'll understand that when you get there. Okay, I think I got everybody. So I'd like to jump in and get started. I appreciate, again, you taking time. Welcome to our task force and our group at trying to figure all of this out. I am going to take a little bit of a presumptive risk. I had promised all of you that I'd go back, review my notes, review the information we had, and then come back with what I believe gets us pretty close to a consensus. And I'd like to go through that this evening. What I'd like to avoid and what I don't want to do is we spent a couple of our most recent meetings sort of discussing all of the different bits and pieces, putting our opinions out there, agreeing and disagreeing. I think we're kind of probably, I hope, I believe, past the need to do that and really kind of focusing on here's what we got and how do we go forward. So that's what I'd like to do. I put this in a PowerPoint just so I could make sure I stayed on course and manage that. I will try to do the screen save or the screen share. I did that before, and with any luck, I could do it again. Let's see. So how's that work? You guys can see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
All that big blue piece there, I guess it is.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yes.
Perfect. Let me run through that with you. My understanding is that City Council asked us to come up with a consensus on the best way, and I define that as safest, equitable, achievable to address the needs and desires of the community with respect to designation of off-leash dog areas within the Englewood Park. Our task force is comprised of, and I was trying to guess where everybody fit into that list. So if I missed some characterization within that list, please let me know. I'll make those changes and get it right. And before I went much further, I want to remind you of our early conversation around consensus. In what I believe is a direction we can recommend to council and move forward, sports lost some fields. Off-leash lost some area. Park people lost some probably space that they would like. And Parks and Rec is making some compromises. So in my world of trying to facilitate these, everybody has a little bit of skin in the game. Also, I want to remind you that consensus is kind of like that. We give and take a little bit. We agree because it's in the best interest of the community, and it's not just you or me. And if I can get to an 80 or a 90% agreement, I'm feeling pretty good about that. So I don't expect anybody to walk away today going, yes, I got everything I wanted. But I hope everybody can walk away feeling comfortable and feeling like we have a good recommendation that we can send forward to council. So that's kind of how I'm looking at our task. Before I hit the next slide, you guys okay with that? Does that work?
Yes.
I've got a question.
Sure.
And I'm sorry I came in a couple minutes late. The very top bullet, is that the city council's wording, or is that a summary of what was asked?
That's a summary. That's mine. And so
Okay.
I gathered that from my initial conversations with Christina. And if I need to reword any of it, I'm certainly happy to do that. But I was just trying to sort of grab a sense of what we were trying to accomplish.
Okay, and then the task force is comprised of, in city resource individuals would be Parks and Rec employees, city employees?
Yes.
Okay. And where would Pirate Youth Sports, would they be under park users?
I put them under park users. I'm certainly more than happy to call them out if that would be, and that's probably a good idea.
I
So-
think that voice is was I don't know. I think it's good to have them as their own bullet item, I guess you could,
Okay.
for lack of better words. Yeah.
Okay, let me do that. I will do that. I could edit it here, but I'd probably take too much time and
No, that's, yeah.
make mistakes, but I will. And would it be helpful, I think, to under city resources, would it be helpful to just put in parentheses Parks and Rec?
I think it'd be good,
Okay.
personally.
Okay,
So we
Steve,
do
we had a
also have, Steve, just,
code.
let me go with
code.
Mark. Let me go with Mark first.
we do have, there is a distinction, I'm not sure how important it is, between the commission, which is, citizen volunteers, and the city staff.
That's a good point.
Okay, real good point, yeah. So how do I call that, Mark? Is it, what commission is it?
Well, the Parks and Rec Commission is what we call it. I don't know if there's a more formal name, but, it is, a lot of this spun out of the Parks and Rec Commission. And of course, we meet with the Parks and Rec Department, city employees regularly. But, we're not city employees. We are just citizen volunteers on a commission.
Okay. Want to get it right.
Give me a ring.
Little details.
This is
Okay.
Ray.
Did I get that? I see. Does that work? Did I get that right now? Anything else we need to add?
Hey, Steve, add code, since we have Dave Lewis with us on this task force.
Another good point, yeah.
Got it. Anything else? Okay, I'm gonna see if I can get this back and go to the next one. What I came up with as I looked at it was, and I wanted to look at it from the perspective of the distribution as well as hours of operation maintenance. We have 6 off-leash park areas. We have 11 on-leash park areas. You'll notice the map to the right and see the little stars that we have all around. All of the quadrants of the city contain an on and off-leash area. And we've talked about the hours of operation moving from the more restrictive hours to the 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. We've talked about maintenance, and this is not exactly the presentation that I will take back to council because we need a little more information around maintenance. And Dave, certainly feel free to jump in if you want to here, but we talked about regular maintenance, that would be water, lawn mowing, that kind of thing. And we talked that occasionally the parks would have to be closed, the dog park sides would have to be closed for long-term maintenance, and that would be reseeding, that kind of work. And I don't know, Dave or Lindsay or anybody want to add to that?
You're correct, Steve.
Okay. So that's kind of, and again, I'll want to get more specifics around all of these areas when it goes back to council. But as a group, as a task force here, we've talked about these a whole bunch. So I didn't feel like I needed to spend a bunch of time outlining that right here. Questions about that? Does that make sense? Does that work? Okay. I'm going to go through the specific parks on the next few slides, but what I counted up and included in this were parks with off-leash areas, would include Canine Corral, Cushing Park, Duncan Park, and I'll put park after that, my mistake, Emerson Park, Jason Park, and Northwest Greenbelt. So those would, in my mind, would be what we've consistently talked about as far as having off-leash areas. Those off-leash park considerations, again, there would be the regular and long-term maintenance hours. And I think we also talked about, and I want to make sure I include as this goes forward, we talked about taking advantage of state-of-the-art design and amenities. And so I don't want to lose that part of the conversation that we've had. There were pieces that we thought would be very beneficial and helpful when it comes to the park. It's, designing of the park and use of the park. Fencing, all of you got a picture of what that fencing would look like. I'll attach that to the report or the recommendations that go back to council.
I think Centennial Park is missing in the currently off leash.
Okay.
These are the new recommendations.
Okay.
These are proposed. I'm sorry. These are
Yeah.
proposed.
Thank you.
Kate?
Yeah, I was gonna say, so Duncan is going back to being off leash because I thought that was one that we had discussed we were going to become no longer off leash.
So I'm happy to talk about that a little bit more. And again, this is not set in concrete.
Okay.
The reason, my thinking behind that, and again, I'm more than happy to take additional comments. My thinking behind that is that fulfills one of the quadrant needs for providing off-leash space. And my thinking was that's important that we get spread around the city. So I've got other hands. Let's see, Jake, you got your hand up?
Yeah, so am I correct in thinking at some point Parks and Rec was considering some kind of fencing scheme at Duncan?
It is, and I've got all of these, well, I shouldn't say all of these, but most of these parks have some kind of fencing scheme to them. And so I wanted to put this slide up to give people sort of an overview of here's what we're looking at. And then I want to move through the parks. And I want to say, here's what we're looking at for this park. Here's what we're looking at for that park, and sort of see how that fits with your sense of what we've got. Any other comments? Okay.
Just a question for tracking, is this slide 2, or can we refer to this as slide 2, or?
I call it slide 4. It's
Thank you.
actually the 4th one here.
Okay,
So yeah, we can do that for 4.
okay,
I put up for slide 5, basically just the list of the other parks. And those parks would be on leash and again, open, from 6 to 11.
Steve,
Yeah,
why did
I need to go back to
Centennial,
that.
yes, go back to that. Why did Centennial, it's now off leash, on leash?
I'm sorry. Centennial, and let Christina or Dave, do you want to speak to that? Because, and I don't have the map in front of me, but I can bring up the map of Centennial.
Yeah, so Centennial Park, we've had multiple dog attacks at Centennial, so it kind of met that criteria that we didn't have at some of the other parks of dog attacks. We didn't have a good spot to adequately fence an area in if we wanted to have a formalized dog park at Centennial. And through the conversations we've had, we've briefly talked about Centennial, but there wasn't much of an appetite, it seemed, to keep that as an off-leash park. And so the idea was to go to on-leash.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
I personally didn't voice too much dissent on Centennial being kind of personally going away, but I was looking at hopefully preserving the Jason and Duncan. I saw that as a sacrifice, but yeah, that's my comment.
Okay. Well, and again, I think trying to bring this forward, it kind of comes as a total package. It's, we're trying to get parks in all of the different segments of the city. We're trying to do that in a way that we can maintain the parks and the grass. I mean, it comes as a whole big package. So I appreciate the sense of sort of trade-off on some of those things. I want to look at each one of them just separately. Canine, I think, stays the way it is. I don't know that there's really we didn't talk very much about it. I don't see anybody saying it needs to change. So any comments on that, or we just leave that as is?
As is.
Okay.
I don't think there needs to be any change to the way that it's managed generally, although if there was, citizens interest groups or others who wanted to do a little investment in the cosmetics over there, I certainly think that it could be a great candidate for some upgrades.
It would seem to me that if we're looking at the other parks in the context of, sort of state of the art and amenities, at some point it might make sense to get around to Canine and see what could be done there. I moved to Cushing. I put these in alphabetical order, figured that was the best way to do it. This dog park is not a rectangular area. It actually, as we talked before, would come closer to following the sidewalks and have a bit more of a creative design to it. But if I remember correctly, that isn't something that's actually going to go into place until, was it 2022?
It could happen next year. It's one of the parks we're going to be renovating, so it could happen sooner than later, but we estimated 2022 if we didn't have any additional funding.
Okay. And again, when this goes to council, I'll have this much more annotated and much more information on it. But as a group here, we've been back and forth through those kind of particulars a fair amount. This comes back to the question about Duncan. We're taking the athletic field programming away from Duncan, and our sense would be a fence approximately right in here. And so this part of the field would be access to off-leash, but it would be fenced. And then this part where there's probably more of the human programming already would be on leash, and the trail around would be on leash. Jake?
Would that be a fully enclosed fenced area?
My understanding is that it would be. I think we'd have to, figure the the contours around the sidewalks and all of that. Certainly don't have a design on it right now, but I got the sense that, you know, again, Duncan is in a different quadrant. This gives us access to that quadrant. It takes an athletic field away, but it also provides, you know, an off-leash dog area.
And so would there no dogs be allowed to the south of there?
I don't know whether that's a no dogs or a
Leash dogs?
on leash dogs, but there would be no off leash dogs allowed in the south area, in this area down here.
Okay.
And I don't know if we have an opinion about on leash dogs in that area or not.
Well, I have a general comment. To my knowledge, I don't think there's any park space in Englewood that is no dog allowed. Is that correct?
That is correct. And we want to keep it that way. And so ultimately, the off-leash area at Duncan, dogs can be off-leash there. If they go elsewhere in the park, they'll need to have their leash on. And that's how the other on-leash parks will remain.
Okay. Questions about Duncan? Shall we keep on going? I went to Emerson. We had talked about this being an off-leash area, and we had talked about this not being fenced. That's what I recall. I know we had also talked about checking with the neighbors. We've got a survey going out, so I know there's some additional pieces in this, but just from sort of a conceptual perspective, this was the, you know, off-leash, non-fenced Emerson. Jake?
Yeah, I would just point out, just for the record, I think I've heard a few times, it seems like there's kind of an idea that since some people have asked for Emerson to be off leash, that everyone around there wants it. But I think it was July 6th, there were 2 people who live in those, in 2 of the immediately adjacent houses who asked council not to do that, despite the fact it wasn't even on their agenda. So I would just for the record, just would want folks like those to be, you know, considered.
Sure. And towards the end, Christina's going to walk us through the survey process. And so that will give us some additional information from that perspective. I got a number of different feedbacks on the Emerson one. Part of the feedback I got was that people were complaining about dogs being off leash because dogs weren't supposed to be off leash. It wasn't that they so much opposed the dogs being able to run around as they felt that if that was the rule, then the rules should be enforced. So that's probably something we need to get a little more information on. But
well, the people at council, if I remember correctly, and this is off the top of my head, it was something about dogs running into their garages and into their yards and stuff. But that's just off the top of my head. I know it wasn't. It was more what's the word? Tangible objections than just rule breaking.
Yeah. We'll do the surveys. We'll see where that takes us. I'm going to go to Jason. That's the one we've discussed at length. What I've put up here is, I think, a compromise. It's a difficult compromise for probably several people on different accounts. I think we heard from the sports side that this is the only, and I might not say this right, so if I miss it, Alan, this is the only, you know, full, large field that you've got within Englewood.
Correct. You know, when looking at that, I talked to my soccer guy too, just real quick on this. Is a big deal for us is as we're growing, and I just want to give you guys a history about Pirate Youth Sports. We helped start this program 6 to 7 years ago. And, you know, we just took over Englewood soccer a year and a half ago. And, you know, they had 50 kids in their whole Englewood soccer program. Once we took over, we jumped it up to over 300 kids playing. So it has been a huge, drastic upheaval of great soccer. And we just hired, the Englewood district hired the new soccer coach, and he's one of our youth coaches for the girls program. And so, you know, when I brought that up to him, he says, you got to save this for us. You know, I got a high school program, 11v11, that needs this field, you know, when we can't use the high school stuff. And then I talked to my other competitive coach who has 5 competitive programs, who has about 6 kids going to the junior Olympic team. Just to give you a little heads up about how our soccer programs are coming. And he said it would be detrimental to our program. So also, that's a full-size football field. Don't forget, we offer football, and it's a great lacrosse field. So that has triple, it's used for 3 different sports. And if it's not used for that, maybe we can throw in some youth, the smaller kid sports, because now I just heard we're getting rid of Duncan. And that was for my 8 and unders and 6 and unders to play. And so I know we have Rotolo, but when I have that many kids, I need more than one field. So and I just want to keep that open. I think it'd be detrimental to the city, and I know some people mentioned that we could use, Colorado Finest, but as you know, if Colorado Finest wants us to bump us, which has happened in the past, we had a tournament and they bumped us 2 days before. We had pie in our face, guys. I mean, if the city doesn't bump us, we have that, we use it, we pay for it. It's tough to work with the district because they rule, right? I get it. High school sports are more important than our kids' sports, and we have to give that up. But when we get pie in our face, and when I get calls from all the other district leaders saying, "What are you guys doing? 2 days notice, you cancel this big tournament." It's ridiculous. Just makes me feel like we're not doing what's good for the sport in general. So I like what you have here. I see the fenced off leash area. You'll take away our T-ball area. But to have that field right there, we really, really need it. There's really no way that we could grow in sports. Another thing is the high school now has about 80% of their coaches in the school versus like 20% a few years back. We're growing the program. We have successful programs. So I'm helping grow that, and we are helping grow that as a program and as parents, as volunteers. Nobody's getting paid. I don't get paid to do this. My kids don't get free football and free sports to do this. I do it with the kindness of my heart for the community. So to lose this field would be terrible, but I appreciate what you have here.
Well, and it's a challenge because we took 2 fields from you, and I know in this diagram it takes a big chunk of Jason apart from or away from the off leash, and so I mean all the way around it's a little bit painful. I get that. We started out with this piece down here for off leash. I've tried to find a way to get some additional space here. Tried to add Duncan into that mix to give some additional space in another quadrant of the city, but I'm under no illusion that the whole thing is a little bit painful to everybody.
I agree.
Steve, you had your hand up. Yeah, Steve, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I understand what Alan's saying, and one thing is you would never lose that field. You would be priority 1. Whenever there's a sporting event, their off-leash privileges are not allowed, which is they've been sharing for 17 years, I believe. I like the idea. I mean, 1.5 acres as opposed to 1 acre. That's nice. I haven't done the math on if you put Duncan's back in, but we don't just need. I mean, I guess you could fill that field with any and all sports just to fill it up. But if you think of soccer and football, spring sports, fall sports, there are pretty good sets of times when those fields would be used. But during the summer, during the winter, after football season's over, November through March, I don't see why Englewood citizens with dogs would be excluded from that. In a sense, that's just making that a pirate youth sport field, but it is an Englewood open space. And I'm happy to hear that there's more coaches in the district, and the head coach being also pirate youth sports. that should give Pirate Youth a leg up with scheduling to make sure they don't get bumped and get that pie in your face, you know, through hyper communication with the schedule at the park.
That'd be nice, Steve, but that's not how it works.
Well, you know, I was a coach. I was a high school coach. I was a district administrator. I worked pretty closely with sports in a metro school district, and you know, ultimately with communication, these things can be minimized. And based on the little bit of research I did, I would make sure that the scheduler and the coaches that are doing the scheduling are hyper aware of when the fields are being used, when they're trying to do the reschedule for, say, spring sport cancellations due to weather.
Seems like we're getting stuck rehashing it.
Go ahead, Mark.
No, I just feel like maybe we're stuck a little bit rehashing it. Let's keep going through the different proposals. I mean, I don't.
I was going to say, you know, we spent, I think, probably a couple of meetings trying to wrestle through, you know, largely Jason Park and Rotella. So I can't figure out another way to meet what those somewhat competing challenges are. So this is what I put up as a best shot at trying to find something where everybody gives a little and everybody takes a little. I'm happy to come back and revisit this slide if we have time and if we need to. Let me go to the last park that I've got here. This is the Northwest Greenbelt. I don't know that we've had much conflict at all around that one. I think everybody's pretty much, you know, agreed with that being the way it is. You've got some large areas of off-leash, not enclosed dog areas. I think the only place where we said we don't want dogs is right there at the playground. Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you're going to start out by not fencing that and then pay attention to see if that is sustainable or not. It may make a decision a year or two from now as to sort of how it's being used.
Steve, yes, that's correct. And I know that block looks awfully large, but the playground's actually in the northeast corner of that street, which is, I can't even read it here. But at any rate, it's not near that whole size.
Okay.
It's a lot smaller than that.
Okay. So before we go to council, we'll get that a little more accurately represented so we can make that look the way that we need it to look.
I have a question about.
Yeah, Steve.
I don't get up to the north side, but the area looks busy. I'm wondering, you know, for the safety of dogs, would enclosure fencing, you know, would that be okay?
Well, I can answer that. Number one, it's not busy.
Okay.
There are not a lot of houses up there other than what you see north of that main area. That's the main housing. The rest of it is kind of light industrial and manufacturing, but most of that is all fenced off. So what remains greenbelt out there is largely fenced on the industrial side. And then beyond that, again, it's a drainage way and it is often subject to flash flooding. So fencing is not a great option.
Okay.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
You should take a run over here. I took my dog there a couple of weeks ago because I am from that neighborhood. And I was shocked how big this place is. I mean, the dogs can run. And like Dave said, it's all industrial. There's hardly any cars coming around on zoo night. Yes. The other streets, you know, you have some, but not a whole lot. But I was amazed how big these parks are.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
I will have to swing by and take a look at it because I have not walked around that area.
I mean, like I said, I'm from this neighborhood and it is like 10 times better than what it used to be. So you all did a great job on this.
Okay, Porfy?
I'm so sorry, I unmuted.
There, you're unmuted. I can hear you now.
No, I'm sorry. It was unintentional unmute.
Okay, I don't have a picture, so I watched you come on mute and I didn't want to miss something if you wanted to jump in. So if you want to jump in again, shout. So that's kind of the collection of the set of parks, the picture of what those look like, what I think gives us a fairly reasonable balance between the off-leash, between taking some of the sports fields, leaving some of the other parks on leash. That's kind of the best I could figure out as a way to find a compromise, something that works for everybody. I'm going to move to the survey part because that's going to be an important component of what we do to get some additional input. And Christina, you're working mostly with the survey. So do you want to walk us through these?
Yeah, so we've contracted with POCO and National Research Center to develop a survey based off our consensus and the knowledge we have of our off-leash parks. And it's in development currently. After tonight, we'll be meeting with POCO to discuss further and really get a draft survey ready to send out. We'll do it in both English and Spanish. It will be web-based, but it will be geocoded and there's going to be an access code, so they'll know where this survey is coming from. You won't be able to duplicate it. You won't be able to share it. 5,000 homes will be randomly selected for this survey. It will be statistically valid. There's a lot that goes, if you know surveys, there's a lot, like 95% confidence intervals. It quantifies the sample error. So when we go to council, when we present this, there's a lot of confidence behind the results that we get based off of how people responded to the survey. Like I said, a specific access code will be sent via postcard to a unique specific home. You'll get a postcard invitation if you're randomly selected. There'll be a URL link. A reminder card is going to be sent, so they'll know if that home has filled out the survey or not. If they have not filled it out, another reminder card will be sent. From the city side, we'll be communicating via social media. Some of our email newsletter lists, we'll post that in there so people know this is coming. If somebody needs a paper copy, they don't have access to the internet, we will be able to send it to them. The city will print it and we will mail it to them. They will mail it back to the city, and then it would be inputted in to the survey to be counted. So the other piece of this, 5,000, we have 30,000 plus residents. 5,000 doesn't seem like a lot. So an additional survey, it'll be the exact same survey, will be opened up to Englewood residents for anyone to fill out. And they can do that between February 10th and March 3rd. That's the current dates that we have. And so it'll be open for almost a month. So anybody that wants to fill out the survey can. It can't be duplicated. Once you fill it out, you're done. You can't continue to fill it out. It will not be included in the statistically valid, but in our mind, it gives us more information to give to our city council so they know a larger picture of Englewood's needs when it comes to off-leash and what people really want to see. So we're trying to give our council the most information in addition to the task force consensus and the Parks and Rec Commission findings and just past information they've had to make a decision going forward that will meet the needs of our community as best as possible. So any questions on that? If you want to go to the next slide.
I've got a second slide, Christina. When you're ready for me to go to that one, let me know.
Go for it. Stephen, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, I know when pre-task force meeting, we did some surveys as well. They probably weren't quite as substantial as what we're doing now, but are we, and I apologize if there's a child screaming in the background. If it comes back the way it did before, are we sending this recommendation to council regardless of what the survey says and we're just providing data? Or are we going to come back and revisit if we're 64, 55, 45 like it was before?
Sure, yeah. So the goal would be, actually, Steve and I and Dave Lee are going to council on December 14th to present your consensus, this group's consensus to city council. with this slide included, that the additional information will be done via survey, because it's a larger snapshot of our community to give more data. So council will have an opportunity to either go with the consensus that we have here tonight, or say, hey, we got some information back on the survey that we really like. We want to do this also. They want to add another park in. They want to take away a park. Again, it's our job just to give them all the information and allow them to listen to the residents and make the best decision that they think is possible for this. So what we present to them in December, and then again later on this in 2021, it could look a little different, or it could be exactly what you're seeing tonight.
And we're not asking, or the intent is not for council to make a decision on the 14th. This is just giving sort of a progress report.
That's correct.
And we'll have additional information that comes in. I've got Kate and then Jake.
Yeah, I think this all sounds great. I just have one suggestion. So you say a URL code, but I know that if one of those came to my house, I would, to have to go sit down on the computer and look it up, that would be a lot. So maybe you could use a QR code, which you just take the picture of. It's a little bit more just like, I think, user-friendly personally, and it's what a lot of the restaurants have been doing for menus. So I think people are pretty in tune with that these days. It just might encourage people to fill it out quicker.
Yeah, I'll ask about that. That could be a good option, and it might be in addition to the URL. So I'll find out if that's an option we can use.
Awesome.
Yeah, good idea. Jake, and then to Steve.
So along the lines of what Kate said, there's also like services like, I think it's called Tiny URL or something, where you can get, URLs that are very short with a little 5-digit code or something. But I had 2 questions, if you don't mind. Are these surveys going to be park specific? Like, are they going to be only people within a certain radius of X park is going to have the opportunity to opine about that park, or are people on one side of the city going to be giving their opinions about a park, 3 or 4 miles away?
Yeah, and then we had a long discussion about that in a meeting with POCO again this week to discuss further on how that looks, but it's a random sampling of all our residents. So 5,000 random residents are going to get this survey to give feedback on Off-Leash. And so the goal is to get all quadrants of the city covered through this survey. One comment that we had was, we know there are residents that use various parks and jump around to all our parks, just for variety too. So you might live up by Emerson, but you often go to Jason or Duncan. And so we have a small city. I mean, it's 6 square miles. So we do know, just because you live next to Jason Park, you don't necessarily go to that park daily. You might jump around. So we want to capture that in this survey.
Yeah, I would personally think, I would be afraid that people, if they are strongly opinionated, they'd want to advocate whatever they don't like on the other side of the city. And I probably go to Bates and Logan once a year, if that, or the Northwest Greenbelt. I don't honestly know if I've ever set foot there. So I would be concerned people would say, put the thing I don't like, shove it on the other side of the city. The other thing I was wondering.
Possible. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I mean, it's certainly possible to include questionnaire items that would allow you to create subpopulations based on their reported use of particular parks. And if the sample sizes are large enough, then those 2 could be analyzed, and you could determine whether whether that particular use was a significant factor in the response patterns.
Okay.
I think that would be helpful, and I think, Christina, we can probably work on that survey to find a way to provide both sets of data.
Yeah, I think on the draft, we had 2 questions that, what park do you live closest to? And then what parks do you visit, and do you use Off-Leash? So through all that analysis, they can string it all together to show true data back as far as what we're looking for. So you can see, hey, this person lives on the north side, but they're throwing the south side under the bus. It could show up that way. So we're going to do our best to get the most information out of the survey as possible.
If you have any questions that are like rank, 1 to 5, most disagree to most agree or something, you could using like ArcGIS, you could probably visualize the data that way based on people's addresses. If you could like plot it into ArcGIS and have a way to numerically quantify the responses, maybe in addition to written comments or something, then you could actually probably come up with some pretty useful maps. Just
Yeah,
throwing
looks
that out
like
there.
I'll find out if they have that ability to do the mapping. I think they do. I know they're able to do graphs and other things, but they use several analytic tools, R, Python, IBM statistical packages, and social sciences to analyze all of the responses. So they're not just using one tool, they're using multiple tools to get the information correct.
Okay.
So yeah, we're contracting with a very good company that does national for federal government all the way down to state and local governments. So I have faith that they're going to get us what we're needing to see.
Okay. The other. Oh, sorry. I had one more, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I don't really see the need for the open participation portion because I think it's going to be a lot of noise, if I'm understanding, unless there's some way, which sounds unlikely. Because I remember the city's previous online Polco surveys, and without the whole postcard thing, it sounds like we're going to have people from Germany and New York telling us what to do, and it just sounds like potential for a lot of unhelpful noise. I'm not really sure why that's needed when we're going to all the trouble to do the statistically valid survey.
It's they highly recommend it. Only Englewood residents will be able to fill it out, and they've got some data behind that to show that who's an Englewood resident and who's not. And so it gets us more data than just 5,000 homes. And I forget the exact number, but if I think it's got to be 600 to 800 surveys have to be received to make it statistically valid, and that's a lot. If you think about it, I'm sure you've all received surveys and it goes into your recycle bin just because you don't have time or you misplaced it and you don't fill it out in time. So doing both, it will be presented to council as two separate surveys showing the statistically valid and then the other. And if I was a resident and didn't get the statistically valid survey, I would want to at least participate if I had a passion behind this topic and at least want my voice to be heard through the survey. So it's part of the cost to doing it. It's no additional cost actually to do the open survey. So we've done this through the city in the past, and it just gives additional data.
How will Englewood residents be filtered out?
That's a good question. I need to ask that for sure. But they had a way to geolocate where the survey was filled out. So it's spying more or less, it sounds like, and how they do it based off of the location of the where the survey is being completed. But I'll get more information on that exact process to see.
I think Jake's concern is a fair one. Let's just get some more information on that, and we'll come back with that information.
Real quick, I'm also concerned just with the open participation. I'm worried it'll be a spirit of like who can whip up the biggest mob, like fill out the survey, to go knock on doors or whatever.
I think that's fair enough, Jake. Let us get an answer to that. I need to go to Stephen Porby.
Who's first?
Steve.
Okay, one with in terms of URL and those other codes, it might be good to provide more than one option. Some people might not be as tech savvy as a lot of the younger crowd that's out there, and they may
the postcard will have information how to contact us to get a survey sent to you, an actual paper survey. So it'll have a phone number for them to call.
Well, that would be good. And URLs, if they can type something in as opposed to doing the, I don't even know what those things are called, where you take a picture. My phone is smart, but like when I go to the restaurant, I can't, take a picture of that and get the menu to come up.
Sure.
We can get both options.
Yeah. In terms of surveys, the questions are, in my opinion, probably going to be the most important thing that's going to give us a valid, statistically significant survey. If it's a poorly worded survey, it's not worth the paper it's printed on. So what is yet to come is pretty important. So I'm just going to put out there, it's real important that experts be involved in the development of the questions. And there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. And I get a little concerned when I hear, let's filter out who's saying what and where they're from. And then that almost sounds like, well, this individual that's part of the random sample can be thrown out because they're talking about the south side of town when they're from the north side of town. And that kind of cherry picking doesn't do anything to give validity to the survey. Thank you.
I think that's a fair enough question. As Christina pointed out, Englewood's not that big. People are going to use parks back and forth across the city, so we need to get a wide perspective on what people are thinking and saying. Let me go to Porby.
Hey, I just wanted to say thank you to whomever's doing all of this. I know Christina obviously is leading the charge on the survey, but I mean, you know how much data makes my heart happy. So thank you. Whichever way it turns out, I just appreciate that it's going to be substantiated. So thanks.
Thanks. Christina, do you want to walk us through this slide?
Yeah, I'll just go over the highlighted section. So there's gonna be a lot of dates. For the first part of December, Steve, myself, and staff will be working with POCO to get the survey developed. And again, yes, experts. That's why we're contracting and spending money to get this done and done right. So they'll help us with the development of how the questions are worded so that we know we get the statistically valid information back. The survey, the postcard, the initial postcard is going to be sent out at the beginning of January. So we're going to wait till after the holidays. And then we'll remind people back again on January 3rd. We'll take the random sample survey through February 10th. And then the open participation survey will open from February 10th to March 3rd. So ultimately, we won't be done with this probably till April, at least taking it to council. And as we know, council has said many times, while COVID's going on, they don't want to see any changes. They just had recent interviews for the park ranger. That person should be starting in early 2021. So when it's time to actually implement the new program, we'll have all the pieces in place, hopefully, to do just that.
Okay. Any questions, any other questions about the survey aspect? Martha?
Okay, Christina, on these the open survey, how are the people going to know when this is going to be available for them to do this?
So we'll work with our communications department to get the word out to our residents that this is available. Jake, to kind of answer your question too, I was just looking at their proposal from POCO. They have 700 homes already validated in Englewood that have participated in past surveys. Those 700 that have already participated in the past will get the open participation survey notification if they want to participate or not. So you do actually have an account to log in to participate in the open survey. So I believe that's how they track where the surveys are coming from. I've not actually signed up for one in recent, and I don't know if they ask for your actual address, but I would assume they would. So again, it'll be via the email communication through social media as best as we can, get the word out. And then all of you too, if helping us spread the word that this is open and how to get to it will be very helpful to get information from our residents.
Okay, so this open survey, did I understand you correctly that with this open survey, it's not going to be counted as the survey that has gone out to the 5,000 residents?
That's correct. They'll be the same survey. The wording will be exactly the same. One is statistically valid because it's a random sampling and that's that 5,000 number. So that's statistically valid. The open participation survey gives a chance for anybody that's a resident of Englewood to give their opinion on this program.
It doesn't mean that their opinion isn't going to count. It
Right.
just means that they're going to be two sets of data. One is people who voluntarily decided to join in and participate, and then the more statistically accurate, or I guess sound one when it comes to that. Okay.
I believe
I'm sorry, go ahead, Martha.
Yeah, I was going to say, I guess to me, that's a part that I don't understand, because if it's not going to count, even though you say your vote is going to count, it really doesn't. I mean, what good is it going to do?
it's not a vote, Martha. It's just to avoid sampling error. So this is purely just stats that they're doing this for. Like, it's purely not to, and honestly, I think it's great that people are doing it. because it allows for community members to feel that their voices are being heard, while also maintaining a statistically valid survey. So I think that it's actually a pretty phenomenal way to do it. And I applaud you guys for
Polko's open surveys that the city did in the.
Jake, just a second. Martha, I want to make sure you're done, and then I can go to Jake.
Well, no, because I'm understanding that it's not going to count towards what you're trying to establish right now. I was just wondering, like, what are you going to do with all that information from the open surveys? Are you going to keep them for later on if the issues start to come up, to show what Englewood wants? Is that what it's for? Or I guess that's what I'm not getting. It's like, if it's an open survey, it's not going to be used, and you're going to keep it for stats, but are you going to use it for later if something does happen?
We will be presenting both surveys to council so they can see the statistically valid survey, and then they'll also be able to see this open participation survey to give them as much data as possible to make a decision moving forward. So everybody's gonna see this data, and I'm hoping that we don't have to, once we get this in place, the new program, whatever it be, it stays for a long time and we don't all see each other than to say hi in the park. So
there you go.
Again, the data's not lost. If you don't get the survey in the mail and you do the open participation survey and you fill that out, you're still counted in it. It's just two different surveys that we'll be presenting.
And I think the important point is both sets of information get presented to council and get shared with council. Jake,
Exactly.
let me get to you.
Okay.
Based on the open Polko survey that the city has done in the past, there's not going to be anything to keep people from making up addresses. And by now it's been almost 6 months of everybody knows that the Englewood versus non-Englewood resident thing is an issue. And so I seriously doubt the open survey is going to have any way to keep people from making up addresses. And I'm sure Kirby understands the difference between a self-selected survey and a random sampled survey, because the latter is statistically valid. A self-selected survey is just noise. It's just pollution, and there are going to be a heck of a lot of people in Denver and Littleton and surrounding cities who we're not going to hesitate to say they live in Englewood and make up a fake address if the survey allows them to. So I just don't see the point unless there is some method. I mean, we went through all this trouble of the postcards with the codes, which is great, and it is statistically valid, right? Random sampling is like the bedrock of statistically valid surveying, and so I just don't see the point. People are not going to hesitate to make up fake Englewood addresses. I guarantee it, and it's just going to be
Jake, real quick,
garbage
so
data.
the past survey that was done was free. We didn't pay any money for that. This one we're paying for, and so there's some other steps they put in place when we actually pay for something. So we're hoping that what that past survey was, we won't see a repeat of that, because this is something that we're actually paying for.
So I think it's a legitimate concern that Jake brings up. We don't have enough information to solidly answer that tonight. So I don't know that it's something we need to spend a whole lot of more time on. We will get that information and we'll get it back to you as a group, because it's a valid concern. I got to think there's some way to get an answer so we can take care of it.
Thank you.
Martha?
But I was just thinking, what about an audit? After this open survey's done, just do like a random audit, just to see if they are Englewood residents or not.
Might be a good idea. Again, let us see what the survey company says. If they've got a good answer, we'll share that with you. If they don't have a good answer, we'll share that with you too, because we don't want people all over the country voting on Englewood, parks.
I agree, and we also don't want to stifle citizens presenting their opinion.
Absolutely.
And if someone's opinion does not match somebody else, particularly, doesn't make a noise.
And I think
it is separated.
And I do think that's the importance of having the open participation, because you don't want to tell an Englewood resident that their opinion doesn't matter.
I'm all for the statistically valid survey. I have no problem if statistically valid participants disagree with me. I want it to be statistically valid. That's not my issue. My issue is whether or not they even belong in the data set, because it's not Englewood's job to provide services to Denver.
I got that. We're going to move on past the survey just because we don't have the answers that you're asking for right now. We'll get those answers and we'll come back to them. Monica?
That's all I was going to say. We're spending a lot of time on this, and it's one piece, and we're putting a lot of, we're just, I think, making maybe some assumptions about how nefarious the rest of the world is around this. So,
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move past the survey if we're ready to do that. I also want to note that all of you will get a chance to take a look at those draft survey questions. So that's up at the top of Christina's slide here. I wanted to talk about next steps. We've talked about the survey to that. I've talked about the update to council. That'll happen on the 14th. The survey goes out. I think we pretty much covered all of those pieces. And we don't have a definitive date for a final presentation. It looks like that's going to be what, sometime in March, April, Christina?
Most likely it'll be April. If we get the draft or the results back end of March, it'll be sometime in April.
Okay. That's kind of what I see as next steps on this. I opened any questions, any discussion that we need before we wrap up this evening. Yeah, Steve.
The final presentation to council is, who makes that presentation? In regard to the task force, will the task force's task be completed with this document that that you're crafting right now?
Yeah,
Will-
ultimately, I think you know, what we go to council on the December 14th, so you're welcome to listen in on that. And that's just Steve presenting this. After that, you may have the survey before that to give feedback. Council will also have it in the Parks and Rec Commission. So you're not quite done yet. We want your feedback on the survey. Once you give the feedback and the survey goes out, we may reconvene you all just to share the results with you first, so you can see kind of where things fell prior to going to council. But ultimately, the full package will go to council, and it's most likely myself and staff that will bring it forward. And then POCO would be there to present the survey results to council, since they are the experts in that and we are not.
Okay.
So yes, we will need your involvement, you know, as we move this forward.
Thank you.
Other questions? I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see everybody's hand up here. Okay, and I don't see any hands. Any other comments? Any other questions? Okay. We've got some work ahead of us. We'll stay in touch with you.
Oh.
If you have questions. What? Okay.
I thought it was on the last slide if there were questions.
No, I'm talking in general.
Okay. Well, going back to Jason Park.
Okay.
I would just like to reiterate that, you know, while, you know, it's a big park, I can see with Duncan, if I know that, well, the last I heard, it's new to this meeting anyway, that Duncan has now potentially been back on the off-leash. I'm pretty sure people that live around Duncan that have dogs are happy about that. But that huge area, 6.5 acres, I think, in the back west side, you know, it's been a shared experience for pirate youth sports and off-leashers, and when they're not in season, at a minimum, I think that ought to be opened up to all of the citizenry, including the off-leashers. I think it's taken away a lot to make that an exclusive pirate youth sports area, and we'd love to share it. That's all.
Sure. My assumption was not that it would be a just pirate youth area. As I was looking to a consensus, my thought is there's probably going to be other sports uses. There's going to be people who are going to want to go do yoga, jog, throw frisbees, whatever you go to the park to do. we would make, my thought is that we would make the distinction between dogs being able to use that area as opposed to humans being able to use that area as two separate spots. But it wouldn't be limited to just, pirate youth sports programming.
Well, every dog has a human on the other end of the leash.
It does. Yep.
It does at times, Steve. And I've been at Jason almost every day because, the hours have been extended. And I've taken my dog there. And it's nice because there's hardly anybody there at the park. But I've been there when there are people there, but they're all in one little, they're like 10 people all together, and they're not utilizing that whole park. So you can't say that you need the whole park. Just give it to the sports.
Well,
that's
it goes.
what parks are about.
If you read what I had written about the dog expert, having small confined areas is not conducive to safety. While it may seem that, it's not conducive to safety for the animals and the people that are in there.
If people consent whether or not
at the appropriate time, big spaces, experts have said that is a positive thing to do.
Let me go to Lindsay and then let me go to David.
One concern with the shared use of, soccer or multi-use sports and activities and dogs are the different maintenance needs that are needed for the turf, for it to be healthy turf for the dogs to use or for the people to use. There's a lot of different aspects, and when it's both being overused like that, then that's what happens 2 years ago when we had to, close and fence off Jason because it was overused by dogs and people. So it's the maintenance of the turf itself, which is, if you go out there now, you can see all the dead spots on the soccer field.
Yes.
And that's because there's the different maintenance needs for the different uses.
I wouldn't attribute all the dead spots to the dogs.
I'm not. No, I'm not. I didn't mean it to come off that way. I'm sorry. It's that shared usage of the dogs and the animals, or the dogs and the people, that cause those additional wear and tear spots that make it more difficult to maintain.
Yeah. And I would just say for off-leashers, when the field is not in use, I would like to see, I'll just start with 4 cones, on the corners. And we ask that during those winter months, spring months, that we communicate and educate the people and ask that they refrain from going on those areas. And, if a dog's running through, that's fine. And if they go to the bathroom, then we go and pick it up, but not, there's a lot of acreage around that for exercise and walking. And a lot of people do go out, some people congregate, as Martha mentioned, and they socialize. And there's also a lot of people of all age groups that make circuits around there. And that's going to seriously impede those individuals. I think 3 laps is a mile there. I don't know how many laps to go around that 1.5 acres will take, for the people to get their mileage in.
Let me go to David.
So I've been very quiet this evening. I really just wanted to take this all in and gather my thoughts before I made any comment. After reviewing this presentation and the recommendations, I can say from the standpoint of code enforcement, animal welfare, and the soon park rangers, I see that the proposals that are being made are going to be easier for enforcement from an enforcement standpoint. It also makes it quite a bit safer for multiple uses within the parks based off of our training and history and experience. I don't want to rehash the whole, this is the problem at this park. We all know that the status quo currently is not working, and these compromises, I think, are amazing win-wins on all aspects within the community. And I look forward to seeing how this is going to make Englewood parks even better.
Okay, Alan?
Hey, I had one quick question for Lindsay. Lindsay, you don't only rent to Pirate Youth Sports, right? I know there's, there's Skyline and there's some other organizations out there that like to rent those facilities also, right? Just not Pirate Youth Sports.
Correct. The priority listing is Englewood residents and Pirate Youth Sports first.
Good.
Then it's open to returning user groups and then new user groups. So yes, we do have groups like Skyline that would come. We've had men's football, youth lacrosse. There's a wide variety of people out there that can help fill in those available time slots, which in turn does help produce additional revenue for the Parks and Rec department. So it's kind of that, yes, we're putting Englewood first and meeting their needs first. And then when we do have those holes or gaps in the schedule, then I'll fill them with outside requests if possible.
And I guess my other assumption, Lindsay, and I should probably check that, is if, I've got some of my friends over and I want to go play a pickup game of football and there's nobody on the field, then I could go onto that field and I could play a game of pickup football until somebody else had it scheduled.
That is correct. Yes, it's similar to like a shelter rental. If it's not reserved, then it's first come, first serve. Sure. If it's an organized group, then there is, the certificate of insurance and a bunch of other additional things. But if it's a group of friends that are like, hey, let's go throw the ball around, then yeah, it's open space. It's open to the public.
Right. Okay. Anything else?
I would just like to suggest to Steve, go down there to Northwest Greenbelt, please. I would like you to go and see how beautiful this park is and how long it is. Because I know that, you talk about the about the acreage that the dogs have to run, and they could run here. They did a really awesome job there, and it's only a couple of miles from Jason Park. Just try it out, and before you say anything else on the park adjacent.
Well,
you might find a new park.
I may. One concern I have has to do, I haven't been up there, so I don't know how busy Zunai and Tejon are. But again, I think the geographic center, population center of Englewood is on the south side of town, and off-leashers are losing, I'll just say 80% of what they have right now. And, I'm not sure, I don't want to bring Centennial up, but it's like 10 acres or something. And they don't get any off-leash. I know there's big problems there, but again, what Dave Lewis said, there are problems, but I don't see them at Jason Park other than people not wanting dogs off-leash. And, there are always issues, but we want to share that. And as Jake said, that is a gem. And a lot of people are going to be disenfranchised. If a survey was done or some statistics were done matching who shows up at Jason Park on some random days and do they have a dog or not, I would bet that, most of the people that show up are off-leash dog users. So there's going to be a lot of disenfranchised people.
Well, that's because all the people have left, like myself and my grandkids. They left Jason Park because of the dogs. So we live 1 block from there, so we can go on and on.
We could.
We have been back and forth over this
exactly
a number of times. The survey is going to help us provide some additional information. I knew that it was a significant risk in trying to put a consensus together, because the consensus is just that. It's not what any one person wants. It's a bit of a mix. And so I did the best I could to try to pull our conversations, our ideas, our thoughts together to find something that works. I know we've still got some questions. I've got some things that I'll follow up on, but I'm trying to move this thing forward and make it work. So, Jake, you got another question?
I just wanted to say overall, I think it's a good document you've got there. I think it's a good consensus. I think we've done good work here. That's overall what I think.
I appreciate everybody's hard work. We're not done. I would encourage you to send me an email, send me questions, please feel free to reach out. We're, like I said, we're not done with this yet, but this is a consensus that I feel pretty good about, at least giving council an update on and saying, hey, here's kind of where we're at right now. We still have a survey to get done. We still have some additional work, but the task force has worked hard, and this is where we've landed at this point. I would ask you to be careful about the reply all emails out to everybody. I understand from Dave Lee that those are something we need to be careful about when it comes to an open meeting. So help me out with that a little bit. And other than that, I think we're good. Anything else? Perfect.
You did a good job.
Thank you, everybody, for your hard work. I will see you again. I want to remind you, we're not done. I'll see you again, and I will certainly appreciate your ongoing input. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.